She said she didn't need a hero. Said it with her chin raised and her hand resting on the worn grip of her revolver. Said it like a woman who'd learned the hard way that salvation wore a borrowed face and left before dawn. But the desert has a way of making liars of us all, and by sunset, those words would taste like copper and regret. The town of Bitter Springs squatted in the valley like a dying man refusing his last rites. Adobe buildings baked under a merciless sun, their walls the color of old bone. Heat shimmered off Main Street in waves that made the distant mountains dance. It was the kind of place people passed through on their way to somewhere better, except most never made it that far. Sarah Coltrane stood on the porch of the general store, her boots planted wide, her dark eyes scanning the horizon. At 28, she'd already buried 2 husbands. The first to consumption, the second to stupidity, which in the territories amounted to the same thing. Now she ran their store alone, kept a loaded shotgun under the counter, and trusted exactly nobody. The rider came in from the east, trailing dust like a ghost, emerging from the Badlands. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her hip, fingers brushing the pistol she wore openly now. No point in hiding it. Everyone in Bitter Springs knew Sarah Coltrane could shoot. Some knew she would. He was tall in the saddle, shoulders broad beneath a trail-worn duster, the color of storm clouds. His hat was pulled low, but she could see the dark stubble on his jaw, the grim set of his mouth. The horse beneath him looked as tired as the landscape, each step raising small clouds of alkali dust. Sarah didn't move as he reined up in front of the store, didn't smile, didn't speak. "Store open?" His voice was rough, like boot leather scraped over stone. "Depends on your business." He swung down from the saddle with the easy grace of a man who'd spent more time on horseback than off. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the scar that traced a pale line from his left temple to his jaw. His eyes were gray as winter sky, and just as cold. "Need supplies, water, feed for the horse." He paused, those gray eyes holding hers. "Maybe information. First 2 I got. Third costs extra." A ghost of something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "Fair enough. Name's Mackenna. Don't recall asking." "No," he said slowly, tying his horse to the rail. "I don't suppose you did." She watched him climb the steps, noting the way he moved. Careful, aware, like a man who'd learned to measure exits and count bullets by instinct. His gun rode low on his right hip, the holster tied down. Not a rancher's gun. Not a merchant's. This was the gun of a man who needed it to be there, needed it to be fast. Inside the store, the air was marginally cooler. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with the necessities of frontier life: flour, coffee, ammunition, rope, tobacco. Sarah moved behind the counter, her hand never far from the shotgun. Mackenna took his time, gathering supplies with an economy of motion that suggested military training. Or something like it. When he set his purchases on the counter, Sarah began tallying the cost. "You get much trouble out here?" He asked. "Define trouble." "The kind that rides in groups." "The kind that takes without asking." Sarah's hands stilled for just a moment. "Why do you want to know?" "Because they're coming." The words hung in the air between them like the calm before a lightning strike. Outside, a hot wind rattled the shutters. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and fell silent. "Who's coming?" "The Blackwell Gang. Maybe you've heard of them." Sarah had. Everyone from Santa Fe to Sacramento had heard of the Blackwell Gang. They moved through the territories like locusts, taking what they wanted, burning what they didn't. 12 men, maybe 15, led by Jack Blackwell himself. They said he'd once shot a man for looking at him wrong. They said he wore a necklace made of gold teeth pulled from his victims. Sarah didn't know what was true and what was legend, but it hardly mattered. Either way, they were death on horseback. "Why would they come here?" "We've got nothing worth taking." Mackenna's jaw tightened. "You've got something they want, someone." "Who?" "Me." The sun climbed higher as Mackenna told his story. And Sarah listened with the wariness of a woman who'd learned that truth and lies often wore the same face. He'd been a lawman once, a deputy marshal working the Southern Territories. Good at the job, he said without pride or shame. Fast with a gun, faster with his judgment. The kind of man who brought in more prisoners alive than dead, which made him rare, made him valuable. 6 months ago, he'd been tracking the Blackwell gang through Arizona territory. They'd hit a mining camp, killed 3 men, made off with a payroll shipment worth $5,000. Cole had followed them into the Superstition Mountains, through country that would swallow a man whole and never give up the bones. He'd found them camped in a box canyon, drunk on stolen whiskey and arrogance. Should have waited for backup. Should have ridden to the nearest outpost and come back with a dozen men. Instead, he'd gone in alone, driven by something he couldn't quite name. Pride, maybe. Or the faces of the men they'd killed. The fight had been brief and brutal. When the smoke cleared, 3 of Blackwell's men were dead, 2 were wounded, and Cole had the payroll. He'd also put a bullet in Jack Blackwell's shoulder, which made him something worse than an enemy. Made him an insult. "I got the money back to the mining company," Cole said, his fingers tracing patterns on the scarred wood of the counter. Thought that was the end of it. Figured Blackwell would lick his wounds and move on. But he didn't. No, he sent word through every town from here to Texas. Said he'd burn every settlement to the ground until he found me. Said he'd make what happened to those mining men look like mercy. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. "And you led him here." "Not intentionally. I've been moving every few days, staying ahead of them. But they've got trackers. Good ones. And I'm tired." He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something beneath the hardness. Exhaustion. The kind that went bone deep. "I was hoping for one quiet night. Supplies, rest for my horse. Then I'd be gone before dawn. Except they're faster than you thought." "Except that." Sarah turned away, staring out the window at the dusty street. Bitter Springs wasn't much, but it was hers. The people here had helped her when her second husband died, had stood by her when most would have cast her aside as unlucky, cursed, too dangerous to know. She owed them something. "How long do we have?" "They were half a day behind me this morning. I'd say sunset. Maybe sooner if they pushed hard. Then you need to leave, now." Cole shook his head slowly. "They've already seen my tracks leading here. If I run, they'll tear this town apart looking for information. They'll hurt people until someone tells them which way I went. And then they'll burn it anyway, just for spite. So what do you suggest? We hand you over like a Christmas turkey? I suggest you and anyone else with sense get out. Ride to the nearest settlement and hole up until this is over." Sarah laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "The nearest town is 20 miles through open desert. Half the people here are too old to ride that far in this heat. The other half are too stubborn. Then I'm sorry, truly, but I won't let them take me without a fight. And this town is going to be ground zero." She studied him in the dusty light filtering through the windows. His hands were steady on the counter, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept flicking to the door. A man expecting death. A man who'd made peace with it. "I don't need a hero," Sarah heard herself say. "I've buried 2 husbands and built this place from nothing. I can take care of myself. I'm not offering to be a hero, ma'am. I'm offering to fight. There's a difference." Word spread through Bitter Springs like wildfire through dry grass. Within an hour, everyone knew. The Blackwell gang was coming, and they had until sunset to decide what came next. The town gathered in the saloon, because that's what people did when the world was ending. They gathered and they talked, and they pretended there was a choice to be made. Samuel Gray, who ran the saloon and served as the unofficial mayor, stood behind the bar, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the wood. At 65, he'd seen Indian raids, droughts, and 3 different currencies. He'd thought he'd seen everything. "We could give him up," someone said. Mary Chun, who ran the boarding house. Her voice was quiet, ashamed, but practical. One man's life for the whole town. You think they'd stop there? Sarah's voice cut through the murmuring. You think they'd just take him and ride off with a polite thank you? They're killers. They'll take what they want and burn us out regardless. So what do you suggest? This from Tom Hastings, the blacksmith, a big man with arms like tree trunks and fear in his eyes. We fight? Against 15 outlaws? 14 now, Cole said from the corner where he stood, deliberately separate from the crowd. And they're men, not demons. They bleed. So will we, Tom shot back. I've got a wife, 2 daughters. I can't ask them to face that. Then send them away, Sarah said. Anyone who can't or won't fight should leave. Take the wagon, the good horses. Ride north to Silver Creek. But those of us staying need to prepare. Prepare how? Samuel asked. We've got maybe a dozen rifles in this whole town. Half of us can barely shoot straight. Cole pushed off from the wall, moving into the lamplight. You've got more than that. You've got terrain. You've got cover. And you've got time to prepare. He looked around the room, measuring each face. I've fought worse odds. And lived? Tom's voice was skeptical. Obviously. Despite everything, a few people smiled. It was a small thing, that moment of humor in the dark, but Sarah saw it shift something in the room. Not hope, exactly, but maybe the absence of complete despair. All right, Samuel said finally. Those who want to leave, gather at my place in an hour. We'll load the wagon, give you what supplies we can spare. Those staying, we need to talk defense. The meeting broke up slowly, people drifting out in 2s and 3s, their faces carved from worry and indecision. In the end, 8 people chose to leave. Mostly women with small children, 2 elderly couples. 18 stayed, which was more than Sarah had expected. She found Cole outside the saloon, staring at the eastern horizon where the sun was beginning its slow descent. The sky was still blue, but she could see the change coming. The light taking on that golden quality that preceded dusk. You could have lied to them, she said. Told them the odds were better. Lying gets people killed. Truth does too. He turned to look at her, and for the first time she saw something almost like respect in those gray eyes. You didn't have to stay. It's my town. It's a pile of wood and adobe in the middle of nowhere. It's mine, she said again, and that seemed to settle it. They spent the afternoon preparing. Cole moved through the town with military precision, identifying firing positions, fields of fire, weak points in their perimeter. He put Tom Hastings and his rifle in the church bell tower with extra ammunition and a clear view of Main Street. Positioned Samuel Gray and 3 others in the saloon's upper floor windows. Scattered the rest along the roof lines and behind barricades made from overturned wagons and barrels. Sarah watched him work, saw the way people responded to the quiet authority in his voice. He didn't order, exactly, suggested, recommended, but everyone moved to do what he said, grateful that someone seemed to know what they were doing. You've done this before, she said when he paused to drink from a canteen. Defended a town against overwhelming odds? Once or twice. Did you win? I'm here, aren't I? That's not an answer, Cole smiled. A brief thing that didn't reach his eyes. No, I suppose it isn't. The sun was 3 fingers above the horizon when they finished. The town looked different now, transformed from a sleepy frontier settlement into something harder. Something ready for war. The streets were empty, shutters closed, doors barred. Rifles bristled from windows and rooftops. A casual observer might mistake it for a ghost town, but Cole knew better. Bitter Springs was holding its breath, waiting for the storm. They came with the setting sun, riding out of the east in a loose formation that spoke of arrogance and experience in equal measure. 14 men, exactly as Cole had said. They rode good horses and wore good guns, and they moved with the casual confidence of men who'd never met real resistance. Jack Blackwell rode at the front, and even at a distance, Sarah could see why men feared him. He was big, broad-shouldered, with a black beard that covered half his face and cold eyes that missed nothing. His left arm hung stiff at his side. Cole's bullet, she realized. A reminder. A reason. They stopped 100 yards out, sitting their horses in a line across Main Street. The sun was behind them, casting long shadows toward the town, making them look bigger than they were. It was deliberate, Sarah knew. Theater meant to intimidate. For a long moment, nothing happened. The outlaws sat their horses. The town held its silence. The desert wind moved between them, carrying dust and the promise of violence. Then Blackwell called out, his voice carrying easily in the still air. "I know you're in there, Mackenna. Come on out, and we'll talk about this like civilized men." Sarah was crouched behind a water trough on the store's porch, her rifle braced against the wood. Cole was beside her, his face unreadable. "He's lying," she whispered. "Of course he is. So what do we do?" "We wait. Let them make the first move." But Blackwell wasn't interested in waiting. After another minute of silence, he nudged his horse forward, stopping in the middle of the street. "Last chance, Marshal. You come out. Nobody else has to die. You stay hiding. We burn this whole town to the ground and pick through the ashes until we find you." "He means it," Sarah said. "I know." Cole stood slowly, stepping out from behind the water trough. He moved with deliberate care, keeping his hands away from his gun, making himself visible but not threatening. Sarah felt her heart slam against her ribs. Fool man. Brave, stupid fool. "I'm here, Blackwell." The outlaw leader smiled, though it didn't touch his eyes. "There he is. The big hero Marshal who shot me in the back. It was your shoulder, and you were facing me. But I understand memory gets fuzzy when you're drunk." Anger flashed across Blackwell's face, quick as lightning. Several of his men shifted in their saddles, hands moving toward weapons. But Blackwell held up his good hand, and they stilled. "You cost me 3 good men, Marshal. Cost me time and reputation. You made me look weak. You did that yourself. And now I'm going to make you pay for it. Question is, how many of these good people are going to die first?" Blackwell gestured at the silent buildings around them. "I know they're watching. I know they're armed. And I know they're scared. They should be." Cole's voice was steady, almost conversational. "Here's how this works, Blackwell. You turn around and ride out. You live to see another sunrise. You start something here, you won't finish it." Blackwell laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. 14 against what? 20 townspeople who've probably never shot anything bigger than a rabbit. Those aren't odds, Marshal. That's a massacre waiting to happen. Then make your play. The air seemed to crystallize, every sound magnified. Sarah could hear her own breathing, the creak of leather as one of the outlaws shifted, the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. Her finger tightened on the trigger, her rifle aimed at Blackwell's center mass. 60 yards. She could make the shot. Probably. Blackwell's hand moved toward his gun. And Tom Hastings, watching from the bell tower, shot him. The bullet took Blackwell in the chest, punching through him with the sharp crack of a rifle report. He toppled backward off his horse, hitting the ground in a cloud of dust, and for one frozen heartbeat, everything stopped. Then all hell broke loose. The outlaws scattered, some diving from their horses, others spurring them into motion, all of them drawing weapons and returning fire. Rifles barked from the bell tower, the saloon, the rooftops. The air filled with smoke and the whine of bullets and the screams of wounded horses. Sarah fired, worked the lever, fired again. Saw one outlaw spin from his saddle, another clutch his leg and fall. Beside her, Cole was moving, his pistol in his hand, firing with mechanical precision. Every shot counted. Every shot found meat. The outlaws split, some charging toward the saloon, others toward the general store. They'd done this before, Sarah realized. This was practiced, tactical. They knew how to take a defended position, how to use cover and suppressing fire to close the distance. A bullet punched through the water trough inches from her head, spraying her with splinters. Another shattered a window behind them. She dropped flat, rolled, came up firing from a new position. Saw an outlaw go down. Heard Cole shout something she couldn't make out over the gunfire. The saloon erupted in flames. One of the outlaws had circled around back, she realized. Set fire to the building while his companions kept the defenders pinned down. Black smoke boiled into the sky, and she could hear men shouting, scrambling to escape the upper floor before the fire trapped them. The water barrels! Cole was beside her suddenly, shouting in her ear. Behind the church, form a bucket line. But there was no time. The outlaws were pressing forward, using the chaos and smoke for cover. Sarah saw one make it to the porch of her store, saw his grinning face as he leveled his shotgun at her. Cole shot him twice, fast as thought. The man fell backward off the porch, his shotgun discharging harmlessly into the sky. Fall back! Cole grabbed her arm, hauling her toward the door. Into the store, now! They stumbled inside, Cole slamming and barring the door behind them. Bullets thudded into the wood like hail. Through the window, Sarah could see the saloon fully ablaze now, flames reaching toward the darkening sky. Men were running in all directions, townspeople trying to fight the fire, outlaws using the confusion to advance. How many are left? She gasped, reloading her rifle with shaking hands. Too many. Cole was at the window, his face carved from shadow and firelight. 8, maybe 9. And we've lost our defensive positions. Samuel, got out. Saw him heading for the church. A window exploded inward, glass spraying across the floor. Sarah wheeled, fired blindly through the opening. Heard a grunt of pain, then running footsteps moving away. Her ears were ringing from the gunfire. Her eyes burned from smoke. And somewhere in the chaos, she realized she was more alive than she'd felt in years. Back door! Cole shouted. She spun to see 2 outlaws kicking it in, their faces masks of soot and fury. Cole shot the first one through the door, but the second made it inside, his pistol swinging toward Sarah. She fired from the hip, missed. The outlaw's finger tightened on the trigger. Cole's bullet took him in the side, spinning him. Sarah's second shot finished it. They stood there in the smoke-filled store, breathing hard, surrounded by shattered glass and splintered wood and the bodies of men who'd died trying to kill them. Outside, the battle continued, but it sounded distant now, dreamlike. You all right? Cole's voice was rough. No, you? No. Despite everything, Sarah laughed. It came out half sob, but it was something. A release of pressure before the boiler exploded. Come on, Cole said, moving toward the back door. We need to regroup. Find the others. They emerged into an alley choked with smoke. The entire western side of Main Street was burning now, flames leaping from building to building. The heat was immense, pushing them back. Through the smoke, Sarah could see figures moving. Some running toward the water barrels. Others just running. A bullet spanged off the wall beside her head. She ducked instinctively, bringing up her rifle. Saw an outlaw silhouetted against the flames, his face a demon mask in the firelight. She fired. He fell. The church, Cole said. That's where they'll gather. They ran through the smoke and chaos, past burning buildings and dead men, past townspeople fighting fires and outlaws hunting targets. It felt like the end of the world. Like hell had come to Bitter Springs and decided to stay. The church sat at the north end of town, stone walls rising solid and dark against the fire-lit sky. Tom Hastings was still in the bell tower, his rifle speaking steadily, methodically. As Sarah and Cole ran up the steps, Samuel Gray emerged from the shadows, his face streaked with soot and blood. How many? Cole asked immediately. 7 of us made it here. 3 more are fighting the fire. I don't know about the rest. Samuel's voice was steady, but his hands shook. We got 6 of theirs. Maybe 7. 8 are down, Cole confirmed. Which means 6 left, plus Blackwell if that first shot didn't finish him. I saw him moving, Tom called down from the tower. He's alive. And he looks angry. Of course he was alive. Men like Blackwell didn't die easy. They collected scars and grudges and kept going through pure spite. Inside the church, they found the others. Martha Hayes, the schoolteacher, loading rifles with calm efficiency. 2 ranch hands from the Double K, both wounded but still armed. Chun, the boarding house owner, her daughter beside her, both holding pistols they obviously knew how to use. "This isn't sustainable," Samuel said quietly. "We're running low on ammunition. The town's burning. And they're still coming. So we end it," Cole said. "One way or another." "How?" Martha asked. "They've got us trapped here." "No, we've got them thinking that." Cole moved to the window, studying the burning town beyond. "They're scattered, disorganized. Probably think they've won. We use that." "Use it how?" Sarah saw it before he explained. Saw the calculation in his eyes, the way he was measuring angles and distances. "You're going to draw them in. Make them think you're making a last stand. While you do what?" "Finish this." Samuel shook his head. "You'll be outnumbered. Cut off. I'm counting on it." Cole checked his guns, reloading with smooth, practiced movements. "They want me. So I'll give them what they want. And while they're focused on that, you hit them from here. Crossfire. That's suicide," Sarah said flatly. "It's tactics. It's the same thing." Cole looked at her, and something passed between them. An understanding, maybe. A recognition of the thing. Neither would admit that somewhere in the smoke and blood and chaos, something had shifted, changed, become something other than 2 strangers thrown together by circumstance. "You got a better idea?" he asked. She didn't. "Then this is what we do. Give me 5 minutes to get into position. When you hear me shout, light them up. Every gun, every bullet. Don't stop until they're down or you're empty. And if we're empty first, then it's been a pleasure knowing you." He was gone before anyone could argue, disappearing into the smoke like a ghost, leaving them alone in the stone church with their fears and their dwindling ammunition. Sarah moved to the window beside Samuel, her rifle ready. Outside, the town burned. Her town. The place she'd built from nothing, defended against nature and men and the simple crushing weight of the frontier. And now it was dying, consumed by flames and violence, all because one man had stood against the darkness. No, that wasn't fair. This was happening because men like Blackwell existed. Because evil had a face and a name, and sometimes it came riding into your town demanding blood. "You care about him," Samuel said quietly. Sarah didn't answer immediately. Watched the flames dance, the shadows move. "I don't even know him. That's not what I asked. I don't need a hero," she said, echoing her words from that morning. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Never have. No, but maybe he needs to be one. Some men, that's all they got." Before Sarah could respond, Cole's voice rang out across the burning town, clear and challenging. "Blackwell, this ends now. Just you and me." For a moment, nothing. Then shadows began moving in the firelight. The remaining outlaws converging on the sound of his voice, drawing together like wolves circling prey. "Get ready," Samuel whispered. Sarah's finger found the trigger. Her breathing steadied. The world narrowed to the window, the street beyond, the figures moving through smoke. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. "For Bitter Springs," Martha whispered beside her. "For all of us," Sarah agreed. And opened fire. The church windows lit up like cannon fire, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. Bullets tore through the smoke, catching the converging outlaws in a withering crossfire. 2 went down immediately, cut down before they could react. A third took a round in the leg and fell, screaming. But these were hard men, survivors. The remaining 3 scattered, returning fire, using the burning buildings for cover. Bullets sparked off the stone church walls, shattered the few remaining windows. Inside, everyone was shooting, reloading, shooting again, the cacophony deafening in the enclosed space. Sarah saw Cole moving through the chaos like death incarnate. He'd positioned himself behind an overturned wagon, firing with cold precision. Every shot mattered. Every shot counted. An outlaw leaned out to shoot, and Cole put 2 bullets in him before he could squeeze the trigger. But the outlaws weren't alone. From somewhere in the burning saloon, Jack Blackwell emerged. He was on foot, his left arm hanging useless, his shirt dark with blood. But his right hand held a gun, and his eyes burned with something worse than the flames around him. He saw Cole, and Cole saw him. The world seemed to slow down. The gunfire, the screams, the roar of flames, all of it faded to background noise as the 2 men faced each other across 60 feet of burning street. The marshal and the outlaw, the lawman and the criminal. 2 sides of the same violent coin. Blackwell fired first. Fast. Too fast. The bullet caught Cole high on the right shoulder, spinning him. His gun fell from suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering on the wooden boardwalk. He stumbled back, fetching up against the wagon, his face twisted with pain. Sarah's heart stopped. She was moving before she thought, before Samuel could grab her arm, before anyone could stop her. Out the church door, down the steps, into the hell of Main Street, with her rifle in her hands and murder in her heart. No! She heard Cole shout, but she was already committed. Already running through the smoke and flames, her boots pounding the dirt, her rifle coming up. Blackwell saw her. Swung his pistol toward this new threat. His face split in a grin of recognition and anticipated victory. Sarah shot him. The bullet took him center mass, just below the sternum. His grin faltered. He looked down at the spreading red stain on his shirt with something like surprise. She shot him again. He fell to his knees, the gun tumbling from his hand. His mouth worked, trying to form words that wouldn't come. Blood bubbled at his lips. "That's for my town," Sarah said, and shot him a 3rd time. Blackwell fell forward into the dirt and didn't move again. The remaining outlaws, seeing their leader dead, broke. One tried to run and took a bullet from Tom's rifle in the bell tower. Another threw down his gun, hands raised. The last simply stood there, staring at Blackwell's body, until Samuel Gray walked up and disarmed him without resistance. It was over. Sarah lowered her rifle, suddenly aware of the heat, the smoke, her own ragged breathing. Around her, bitter springs burned. But they'd held, survived, won. She turned to where Cole sat against the wagon, his hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. His face was pale, his jaw tight with pain, but his eyes were clear, focused on her. "I thought I told you to stay in the church," he said. "I don't take orders well." "I noticed." She knelt beside him, examining the wound. The bullet had gone through clean, missing bone and major vessels. Painful, but survivable. She tore a strip from her shirt, binding it tight to stop the bleeding. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "You saved the town, Sarah." "Don't." She cut him off, her hands busy with the bandage, her eyes determinedly not meeting his. "Don't make this something it's not. You were a man who needed help." "I helped, that's all. Is it?" She finally looked at him then. Saw the question in his eyes, the thing neither of them had said. The thing that had grown between them in the space of a single violent day. "I don't know," she admitted. "Ask me tomorrow." When the smoke clears, he smiled, a real smile this time, and nodded. "Tomorrow, then." The sun rose over Bitter Springs like a blessing, washing the smoke-stained sky with gold and crimson. The fires had burned themselves out sometime before dawn, leaving behind blackened timbers and ash. Half the town was gone. The saloon, 3 stores, 2 homes. But the church still stood. The general store, though damaged, remained. And the people somehow had survived. They gathered in the street as the sun climbed higher, 18 souls who'd faced hell and walked out the other side. Tired, smoke-stained, wounded in body and spirit. But alive, together, unbroken. The 2 surviving outlaws sat bound in the shade of the church, awaiting the marshal's deputies that Cole had sent for at first light. They'd be tried and hanged, probably. But that was for others to decide. Bitter Springs was done with justice for now, done with violence. Sarah stood on what remained of her store's porch, surveying the damage. The front wall was riddled with bullet holes. The windows were gone. Half the inventory was destroyed or looted, but the core structure held. The foundation was sound, like the town itself, she thought. Damaged but not destroyed. Scarred but standing. Thinking about rebuilding? Cole's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him climbing the steps, his right arm in a sling, his hat pushed back on his head. He moved carefully, favoring his wounded shoulder, but there was color in his face now, strength returning. "Someone has to," she said. "Can't let Blackwell have the last word." "No, I suppose not." He stopped beside her, looking out at the ruined town. "I'm sorry for bringing this here. You didn't bring it. You tried to lead it away. There's a difference, is there? Those men are still dead. These buildings are still burned." Sarah considered that, weighing the truth of it. Maybe, but if you hadn't been here, we'd have faced them blind, unprepared. They'd have ridden in and taken what they wanted without resistance, because we wouldn't have known how to fight back. You taught us something yesterday, Cole Mackenna. You taught us we're stronger than we thought. You taught me something too. What's that? That heroes don't wear badges or ride in on white horses. Sometimes they wear aprons and run general stores and tell federal marshals to go to hell. Despite everything, Sarah laughed. I don't recall telling you to go to hell, not in so many words. But the sentiment was there. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the town begin to stir. People were emerging from their homes, assessing damage, beginning the long process of rebuilding. Martha Hayes was already organizing the children, turning cleanup into a game. Samuel Gray stood in the ruins of his saloon, shaking his head, but Sarah could see the determination in his stance. He'd rebuild. They all would. "What will you do now?" she asked. "The deputies will be here by noon. You'll have your prisoners." Case closed. Cole didn't answer immediately. Looked east toward the horizon where he'd ridden in just yesterday. A lifetime ago. An age. "I could keep moving," he said finally. "There's always another town. Another badge. Another fight. You could. Or—" He turned to face her fully, those gray eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Or I could stay. Help rebuild what I helped destroy. A general store needs walls. Lumber. Someone who knows how to swing a hammer." Sarah's heart did something complicated in her chest. "You're a federal marshal. Not a carpenter. I'm a man who's tired of running. Tired of being alone." His good hand reached out, rough fingers brushing her cheek with surprising gentleness. "I'm a man who found something worth staying for. If she have me, I told you I don't need a hero, I know. You said it right before I became one. Or maybe right before you did." He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "Maybe we saved each other. Would that be so bad?" Sarah thought about her 2 dead husbands. The years of loneliness. The walls she'd built around her heart, brick by painful brick. The certainty that needing someone, trusting someone, was just another word for weakness. But standing here in the morning light, looking at this scarred, stubborn man who'd stood against impossible odds for people he didn't know, she wondered if maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe strength wasn't about standing alone. Maybe it was about knowing when to let someone stand beside you. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "How to trust. How to let someone in. Neither do I, but I figure we could learn together. One day at a time. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." Sarah looked out at Bitter Springs again. At the ashes and the survivors. At the destruction and the determination to rise from it. At the end of one thing and the fragile beginning of another. "All right," she said finally. "Stay. Help rebuild. We'll see where it goes." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She smiled, feeling something tight in her chest finally loosen. "But you're working for room and board, Marshal." I don't run a charity. Wouldn't dream of it, ma'am. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips brushed hers, gentle and sure, a promise sealed in the smoke-scented dawn. When they parted, Sarah felt the last of her walls crumble. Not broken, opened. A door instead of a barrier. "Sarah!" Tom Hastings was calling from down the street. "We're organizing work crews. You coming?" She pulled back, but kept Cole's good hand in hers. "Coming." Then, quieter to Cole, "We've got work to do. Lead the way." They walked down the steps together, into the ruins of Bitter Springs. Behind them, the general store stood battered but unbroken, its walls marked with bullet scars that would become history. Around them, the town was stirring to life, people gathering tools and hope in equal measure. Samuel Gray saw them coming and grinned through his soot-stained beard. "Well now, look who decided to stick around. Someone's got to make sure you rebuild that saloon to code," Cole said. "Code?" Samuel laughed. "This is the territory's son. The only code is don't fall down. Then I'll make sure it doesn't fall down." They set to work as the sun climbed higher, turning the desert gold. Clearing rubble, salvaging what could be saved, planning what would rise from the ashes. It was hot, dirty, back-breaking labor. Sarah's hands were raw by noon. Her back ached. Her eyes stung from lingering smoke. She'd never been happier. Cole worked beside her, one-armed but uncomplaining, hauling timber and debris with the same quiet determination he'd shown facing down the Blackwell gang. Every now and then their eyes would meet, and something would pass between them. Understanding, promise, the beginning of something neither could quite name but both recognized. By mid-afternoon, the sound of hoofbeats announced the arrival of the deputies from Silver Creek. 3 hard-faced men led by a grizzled captain who took one look at the ruins and whistled low. "Hell of a fight," he said to Cole. "Hell of a town," Cole corrected. The captain's eyes went to where Sarah stood, rifle still slung across her back despite the work clothes and dust. "Heard it was a woman who brought down Blackwell." "Heard right," Cole said, pride clear in his voice. "Huh." The captain studied her with new respect. "Well, we'll take these prisoners off your hands. You coming back with us, Mackenna?" "Got paperwork needs filing. I'll come by in a few days. Right now I'm needed here." The captain glanced between Cole and Sarah, saw their hands briefly touch, and smiled knowingly. Understood. Town this tough, be ashamed to leave it undefended. That it would. They watched the deputies ride out with their prisoners, heading east into the heat shimmer. Cole's past, riding away into the desert. His future standing beside him, dusty and beautiful and strong. "No regrets?" Sarah asked. "Not even one." As the sun began its descent toward evening, painting the ruins in shades of amber and rose, the people of Bitter Springs gathered once more. This time not in fear, but in celebration. Someone had salvaged a barrel of whiskey from the ruins. Martha Hayes had organized the children to pick wildflowers from the desert. They decorated the scarred walls with blooms of yellow and purple and white, turning devastation into something almost beautiful. Samuel raised his cup in a toast, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "To Bitter Springs. May she rise tougher than she fell." "To Bitter Springs," they echoed. "To second chances." Martha added, "Second chances. To heroes." Tom called, looking directly at Cole and Sarah. Sarah felt her cheeks flush, but Cole just squeezed her hand and raised his own cup. "To survivors," he said. "Every last one of us." They drank as the sun set, as the stars emerged one by one over the desert, as the darkness that had nearly consumed them became just another night. A night full of possibility instead of fear. A night where the future felt less like a threat and more like a gift. Later, after the crowd dispersed and the fires burned low, Sarah and Cole stood together in the ruins of her store. The moon was full, casting silver light through the broken roof. "You know what's funny?" Sarah said, leaning against his good shoulder. "What's that?" "Yesterday morning, If someone had told me I'd be standing here with a federal marshal, planning a future together, I'd have called them crazy. And now? Now? She looked up at him, at the scars and the strength and the surprising tenderness in those gray eyes. Now I think maybe crazy isn't such a bad thing. Maybe it's just another word for brave. Or maybe it's just another word for hope. She kissed him then, long and deep, a kiss that tasted of smoke and whiskey and tomorrow. When they parted, both were smiling. "I still don't need a hero," she whispered. "I know, but I'm glad you're here anyway. So am I." They stood together in the moonlight, in the ruins of the old and the foundations of the new. Two people who'd found each other in the fire. Two survivors who'd learned that strength wasn't about standing alone, but about knowing when to let someone share the weight. Behind them, bitter springs slept. Scarred and damaged, but alive, standing, ready to rebuild, to rise, to become something new and stronger from the ashes of what had been. And as the desert wind whispered through the broken walls, carrying the promise of morning, Sarah Coltrane realized something she'd never expected. She'd spent so many years proving she didn't need saving that she'd never considered the alternative. That maybe being saved and saving someone else weren't opposites. That maybe they were two sides of the same thing. That maybe love, real love, wasn't about needing or being needed, but about choosing. Every day. Every moment. Choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. Choosing to fight when surrender would be safer. Choosing to open your heart when closing it would hurt less. She'd told Cole she didn't need a hero, and she'd meant it. She didn't need saving. Didn't need protecting. Didn't need someone to fight her battles or carry her burdens. But wanting, that was different. Wanting someone to stand beside you, to face the darkness together, to build something new from the ruins of what came before. That wasn't weakness. That was the bravest thing of all. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his voice soft in the darkness. Sarah smiled. "I'm thinking tomorrow we start rebuilding. The store first, then the saloon, then everything else. It'll take months, maybe years. And I'm thinking I'm glad I won't be doing it alone." Cole's arm tightened around her. "Neither will I." They stayed there until the moon set and the first gray light of dawn began to creep across the eastern horizon. A new day, a new beginning. The first of many. Bitter. Springs would rise again, stronger, better, changed by fire and blood and the courage of ordinary people who'd found themselves capable of extraordinary things. And Sarah Coltrane, who'd buried 2 husbands and built a life from nothing, who'd faced down the Blackwell gang with a rifle in her hands and murder in her heart, who'd spent so many years proving she needed no one, had finally learned the truth. She didn't need a hero. She'd become one herself, and found one standing right beside her.
Thanks for watching this story till the end. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And before you go, check out these other amazing Western stories waiting for you next. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you on the next ride.